Jim Burris is going to be leading Gary Kelly in a conversation, and they will be taking audience Q&A during the program. First, we'll introduce Jim Burris, who's been with WABE Radio since 2008. He was most recently co-host of A Closer Look, but as of this week, he is the station's first ever investigative reporter. That's very exciting. We are also proud Jim is still part of the family as a former board member for the Atlanta Press Club. So, thank you, Jim. Next is our guest of honor today, Gary Kelly. He has been CEO of Southwest Airlines since 2008. Under his leadership, the airline has grown to become the nation's largest airline in terms of originating domestic passengers carried. So that's, may have to explain exactly what that is. So Southwest is frequently represented on Fortune magazine's list of the most admired companies in the world, and Fortune has recognized Gary as one of the top 5 underrated CEOs. And Forbes has recently recognized Southwest in the top 20 of America's best employers. And Air Transport World has named Southwest Airline of the Year as recently as 2015, so that's great. Southwest has more than 40 years of consecutive profitability, and this was, to me, one of the most impressive. The airline in this time has never had a single layoff. That's pretty darn impressive. Pretty good. Pretty darn good. It's the nation's leading low-cost carrier and has consistently received the lowest ratio of customer complaints with the Department of Transportation. So for everyone, it's no secret that a lot in the airlines industry, a lot of airlines, there have been some challenges with some negative things going on with some of the airlines recently, but we look forward to hearing how Southwest has been able to remain on top of the industry and a favorite for flyers for so many years. So welcome, Gary Kelly.
All right, thank you.
First, I'd like to turn this mic on. It's all right. Can you hear me? All right. First, I'd like to thank Gary Kelly for coming to Atlanta and being a part of this Newsmaker luncheon. I'd also like to thank you all for coming out and supporting the Atlanta Press Club. And thank you to the Atlanta Press Club for inviting me to moderate this conversation. Here's a little buzz here.
I'm going to look into that, so continue
You want
on.
to share?
If I speak this loudly, can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right, we'll just try that. We're going to have a conversation, and at the end, we'll open it up for questions from the audience. So if you have a question, be ready to go with that. And I want to start, Gary, with 5 years ago. That's when Southwest entered the market. Many of you remember an airline, AirTran Airways, that wasn't based in Atlanta, but its largest hub was here in Atlanta. Southwest merged with AirTran, and that brand went away. So kind of take us through what 5 years has done for Southwest here in Atlanta.
Well, and again, thank you all for having us today, and it's a great pleasure, great honor to be here, and I know Jim well, and it's a real treat to have a conversation here with Jim, but thank you all. Atlanta is a great city, and it was conspicuously absent from our route map in 2010, and we had an opportunity to talk to AirTran about combining forces, which would have the benefit for Southwest of adding Atlanta among some other great things. But we closed on our AirTran acquisition in 2011, and then began at that point the gradual integration of AirTran into Southwest Airlines, which took roughly 3 years. So all of that was ultimately completed by the end of 2014. So a step in that process was then adding Southwest flights into the Atlanta market, and we started that in February of 2012. So this is our 5th year celebration, if you will, and it's been a fantastic 5 years. AirTran was in an interesting position in Atlanta at that point. There were 200 daily departures in 2011 when we acquired them. They had their origins here, as you all may recall, was as ValueJet Airlines. ValueJet started out in 1993, if I remember my history right, as very much a clone of Southwest Airlines. A funny story, by the way, I don't remember the analyst's name now, but I was chief financial officer at the time. This is I've again been at Southwest a long time. So when you're a public company, investors come to you and they may or may not own your stock. You don't know their motive for talking to you. You're hoping that they're considering you as an investment. So I was talking to this analyst for about 2 years. And as it turns out, he was one of the founders of ValueJet. So all of that, all those interviews that he was doing had nothing to do with buying Southwest stock and everything to do about ValueJet. But they started out as a point-to-point airline, and then ultimately morphed into a hub-and-spoke airline by the time we acquired AirTran, which was the successor airline, in 2011. Well, that is not what we do. On a given flight, 75 to 80% of the people that originate, Laurie, is what that means is it's not enplanements as in connecting passengers. So in terms of the people getting on the first leg of their journey, we carry more passengers in the U.S. than anybody else. So it takes that little bit of explanation. But 75 to 80% of the customers that fly on Southwest are flying nonstop, maybe is an easier way to describe that. And a hub-and-spoke airline like our primary competitor here, or AirTran, that will be flipped. It may be only 25% of their customers are going to fly nonstop, and the other 75% are going to connect. And you all understand this is a major connecting complex. So we undid the hub and carry more customers today in and out of Atlanta with 75 fewer daily departures than what AirTran was doing if you go back to 2011. Then if you look at the number of cities that we serve, because we don't hub and spoke, we don't serve small cities like Newport News, Virginia, as an example, or Atlantic City, New Jersey. So there were roughly 20 of those very small cities that were only on the AirTran route network to hub through Atlanta. Now, again, mind you, people aren't getting on the airplane in New Jersey to come to Atlanta. They're coming through Atlanta to go somewhere else, which doesn't really do a lot for the local economy. So we eliminated those cities and now serve 18 fewer cities, but you have more seats and more flights into the meat of the Southwest network, which are cities like Dallas, Houston, Austin, Chicago, Denver, LA, Las Vegas. And that's where our people are going. They're going from Atlanta to those places, or those places to Atlanta and back. And that's what we do. In the markets that we serve today, there are 38 nonstop destinations. The traffic is up 30% in those markets in this 5-year time period, or 6-year time period. And I am very, very pleased with that. The other thing that you all, as consumers in the market, would be very pleased to know is that in 6 years' time, the fares aren't up. They're actually down 6% compared to what, on average, compared to what AirTran was charging at the time. So, and in fairness, it's not just Southwest. This is a very competitive market. Delta has grown significantly here over the past 6 years. You have other low-cost carriers that have added service. You got a really good thing going here in Atlanta, and we're just very pleased to be a part of that. Of the markets that we serve, 1 in 4 fly on Southwest Airlines, which is our nationwide average. And you know, we're never going to be the #1 airline here in terms of having the most seats or the most flights or the most number of passengers, but we are a very significant #2, and with 125 daily departures, it puts Atlanta easily in our top 10. And so, yeah, to be in one of the strongest competitive hubs in the world, with a brand new presence 5 years ago, to be where we are today, I am delighted. And I give all the credit to our people that serve the Atlanta market here every day. They do a phenomenal job. And that is our difference. That was our marketing campaign when we launched. It is, We don't have the most flights. They're going to match our fares because they have to, and they'll have more destinations than we do. So how do we win? We win with our people, and that's what we've done.
You mentioned that you may never be number one in the Atlanta market. Would you want to be number one?
Well, I think we always want to be the best at everything that we do. We want our customers to think that we have the best service at the lowest price. If we can do those two things, that we always tell ourselves and our people that we will win, so to speak. And that's what we aspire to do. That sort of naturally, if you can do those two things, the natural result is you'll probably have the most customers. But it won't happen overnight. So Southwest is celebrating 46 years. I'm going to say, Linda, that we probably became the #1 airline in the country in roughly 2004 or 5, somewhere in that time period. So it took us, several decades to get to that point. Denver is an interesting example where this is only our 11th year to serve Denver. And we are the #1 airline in that market, and we have a large hub competitor there. They're just not as strong in Denver as Delta is here. But we're very well prepared for bad times. And that is, over a long period of time, that's been the difference. And we're very well prepared to compete. So do we want to be #1? We want to be #1 qualitatively. I don't think that we absolutely have to be big for big's sake. But it's hard to deny that you would like to have the most customers. And as long as we have the best service at the lowest price, I think that there's always an opportunity for that, even here in Atlanta.
You've been with the airline just over 3 decades, as I understand. Right. At what point did you look out at the landscape and say to yourself, something has to change here at Southwest. We have to do something differently?
Well, I started in 1986, and from 86 through 2001, I wouldn't say that it was just, let's open a new store. It wasn't quite that simple, but for the most part, our strategy was, what are the next 2 or 3 cities that we want to open next year? And how many more airplanes does that equate to? That was our strategy. We're going to continue to be low cost. We're going to continue to be no frills, point to point, all Boeing 737, all domestic was part of our strategy at that point in time. And the world changed, as much as we did not want to admit that at 9/11 and thereafter, but the world did change. Coincident with that, not literally, but if you think about the early part of the 2000s, fuel prices started soaring, and then this business is uber competitive. And Gerard Arpey, who's a former CEO at American, always used to joke that there are no barriers to entry into this industry, and there are plenty of barriers to exit, which was so true. So we may have had airline consolidation, by the way, and fewer airlines today, but I can assure you it is no less competitive. It is a brutal battlefield out there. But the main thing that has changed since I've been CEO is these fuel prices. Fuel prices go up. We are very leveraged to fuel. Every transportation company is, but certainly an airline. We burn billions of gallons of jet fuel a year. That forced fares up. You all have heard the term the Southwest effect. That is, you lower fares. It is amazing how price sensitive air travel is to the price. And we'll lower fares. We have many examples over the decades where the traffic would increase 2 or 3 times. 2 or 3 times. Well, if oil prices go up and fares go up, the reverse happens. It is the anti-Southwest effect. And we were very devoted to short-haul markets. When I started in 1986, the average flight distance was 325 miles, which was a 1-hour flight. And we were especially hurt as oil prices and fares went up in those markets. So around 2004, we realized that we needed to be doing some things differently. And we needed to provide more choice for our customers, especially the road warriors, who value amenities perhaps more than the 1 or 2 time a year flyer who's going just for vacation. So we changed our boarding process. We added some new fare products, which allowed people to board the airplane first. We looked very seriously at assigning seats. Our customers told us in very loud voices that we like the open seating, just fix your boarding process, as examples. And then we also anticipated that the demand in the future was going to be more long distance flights than short distance. Now, we're still the #1 short haul airline in the country. There just aren't as many people flying short trips as there used to be. The good news is the growth in air travel has been significant in what I would call the medium distance to longer distance flights. So, 3-hour-plus flights, that growth has been tremendous. So we changed our frequent flyer program to be better suited for long distance flights. We had a great short haul program that rewarded people. It did not reward people adequately enough for taking a longer flight. So we changed that, fixed it. I think we have the best frequent flyer program in the world. The other thing we did is we broke from our tradition of having a single version essentially of the 737, and we got an airplane that had 32 more seats, which for us was a big deal. It meant that we crossed that magic 150 seat threshold, which demanded a 4th flight attendant, and it created more scheduling complications for us. So we invested in the effort to be able to do all of those things. Why did we do that? Because a larger airplane is better suited for the longer distance flights. And the cost per seat, the rule of thumb in the airline business is the bigger the airplane, the lower the cost per seat. And therefore, you just have a better cost efficiency of flying longer distances. So we did that. Then we acquired AirTran, which gave us a presence in Atlanta, in Washington, D.C. We're now the #2 carrier in Washington, D.C. Without that, I'll bet you we wouldn't even be serving Washington, D.C. today, because it is so difficult to get slots, and then you have to get real estate in addition to the slots. So AirTran was our mechanism to at least get our foot in the door there. And then we finally decided to create the capability to fly international, and the 737 does that mission very well. North America is our opportunity, and maybe even some destinations in South America, and again, all with the 737. So you put all of those things together and a continued focus on great service and low cost and low fares, and we've done real well. The other thing that we chose not to do, is, as you all know that we're famous for, is the airline industry was bankrupt, was restructuring. Every major airline that existed when I started is either gone or gone bankrupt. And I'm proud that Southwest isn't remotely close to that. Not only have we not gone bankrupt, but as Laurie said, we've never had a layoff, which is just, and it's been one of the best performing stocks over our lifetime as well. And we chose not to follow the herd and begin unbundling and charging for bags and charging for change fees and charging for what are supposed to be free frequent flyer awards and any variety of other unfriendly, anti-consumer, opaque kinds of techniques. So we are proud of the fact that we have a campaign now about transparency, where what you see is what you're going to get. We don't offer all things for all people, but we try to be very, very good at what we do, and I think it's worked really well.
So I understand you all just put online a new reservation system, major
Yes.
investment for the airline. This opens up some new opportunities, including the potential for code sharing with another airline to reach more passengers in cities. Is that something that you think Southwest will do?
It is something that we will do, and it was part of the desire to move to a modern reservation system. And I do want to just pause quickly and just recognize with everyone, we're probably the 2nd or 3rd largest airline in the world, at least based on, again, on passengers carried. And and at some point along the line here, we could be the first. The point is, it's a very large airline. We'll end next year with 750 airplanes. I'll bet you in the 1960s, without technology, you could not operate an airline of that size. So just to give you the context. So the reservation system transition that we did has to be the largest ever in history. It's certainly the largest project that Southwest Airlines has ever had. It's a $500 million project. And it just worked out beautifully. The technology has been virtually flawless. Now, if you talk to our people, many of them are here today, it ain't so easy. It is really hard to have known a system for decades that was customized for all of the uniqueness of Southwest Airlines, and then have introduced a new way of doing business that in some cases is not easier but harder. So it's been very painful for them, and they have been real warriors and have done a phenomenal job. But that's a different thing, and but with so there is pain involved with deploying something new. Good news is the technology is working as advertised and provides additional capabilities. Code sharing is important for a couple of reasons. One is, we'll get a few extra passengers per flight with these new itineraries. And I'll take a second to explain what code sharing is quickly, but basically Southwest today has 750, close to, well, call it 700 airplanes, and we serve 101 destinations. So we can partner with other airlines and sell itineraries on our website that make it appear that we're all one airline, and that will add more destinations and on a connecting basis in addition to our 101. And that is the strategic value of us doing that, because now if you think about Atlanta, we can get you to 38 nonstop destinations, probably close to 100 total other destinations on a connecting basis. But if we had a code share partner, we might be able to get you to 150 destinations, or who knows. And that's the value of having that, because a lot of our, we met with customers this morning and said, well, why don't you fly Southwest? Well, because you don't fly to the places I need to go. It's just that basic. So we don't have a way to get you to Europe right now. We don't have a way to get you to Asia or even Hawaii and Canada. So there's a way to extend our route network by doing that. And of course, the people who do take those itineraries will be extra customers compared to what we would have had. So there's a nice revenue benefit there too. But I think it's more important to me that we win more customers and more companies and corporations because we can get them where they need to go. But that's several years away.
Southwest is pretty open about its culture and holds that very close and prideful of it, in fact. Is there a danger in losing that culture when you put a Southwest customer on a different airline, and that may be their front-facing experience?
Absolutely. And I think, I don't know that it's so much the culture that is exposed there as it is the customer experience. And the fact that, as everybody here knows that's flown Southwest, everybody here has flown Southwest. We're just different. And we did code share while AirTran was still flying those 3 years of integration. It was just different. You'd be on a Southwest leg and you'd be on an AirTran leg, and we're trying to sell different features, and they just don't match up perfectly. So there's absolutely a challenge there, which is why I don't think that we're going to be talking about trying to push a large number of customers onto that experience. And we'll just have to, and we'll want to ease into this. But I think back to your culture point, when I started in 1986, there were 5,000 employees, and today there are 55,000. So in 1986, they were asking Herb Kelleher every year, well, what's it going to do to the culture to keep growing this company? And 50,000 employees later, it's still very, very strong. And what is interesting to me is that the new people that come in bring such enthusiasm and such gratitude to be a part of what they think is going to be a really great company, that helps perpetuate the culture. But you just think about everybody's calendar and what you put on your calendar and what is important. And if you just use that analogy, what is on our calendar, number one, is our people and our culture. And as long as we care about that the most, we'll make it happen together. But it's not me, and it's not the leaders in this room. It's all 55,000 who have to cherish it. But that does translate, I think, to great customer service. And we heard some wonderful stories from our customers this morning about how our people made a difference for them. And we celebrate that often, and lucky for us, we have a lot to celebrate there.
There was a high-profile incident with one of your competitors where a doctor from my hometown.
Really?
Yeah, you haven't heard this? Was, let's say, escorted off of a competitor's flight. But because of that, Southwest changed its policy and no longer will overbook flights. Talk about how important kind of the public aspect of that one incident was to changing the airline industry.
I would say it was a catalyst for us to refocus on the question. And I'll just put in a plug for our leadership development that we have at Southwest. We have a manager in training program, and they have an MBA-style case study that they do at the end of their coursework. And then our senior leaders are assembled, and they make these presentations to us about what ideas they have. And this idea goes back to 2010 with an MIT class that had recommended that we stop the practice of overbooking. Now, again, with the calendar analogy, culture is very important to us, and right aligned with that is customer service. We want our customers to love Southwest Airlines. We want them to be our biggest fans. And in turn, we want our employees to be really proud of the product that they're offering. And to me, it's just an easy analogy to say, would anybody here be proud to have to tell a customer who wasn't expecting that they were going to have to pay $50 to check a bag? I've got to have $50 or you're not getting on this flight. Jason and I were together talking to a government official whose 17-year-old daughter who did not have any cash, didn't have the money to pay for the bag fee, and they denied her boarding. So what employee would be proud of that? So if you just think about it that way. So what's my point on overbooking? Well, overbooking is simply taking more bookings than we have seats on the airplane. And we do that because we don't want the airplane to take off with an empty seat, and you run the risk of that because of no-shows. It's just that simple. And overbooking in and of itself is not a bad thing. Overbooking is a problem when more people show up than you have seats, and that we call an oversale. So there's a little difference in the term there. So when we do have oversales, it is horrible. And our employees don't like it. I don't like it. Obviously, our customers like it the least. And so for years, the point is, for years, we have been trying to reach a conclusion that it was in our overall best business interest to stop that practice. And it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it isn't good. So time has gone by. The show factor has gotten better and better and better. And to be blunt, our economic circumstances in 2010 were not what they are today. We have far lower fuel prices today, and I'll just admit, we can afford to take this risk. And in the end, I'm not sure that it's going to cost us anything in terms of lost revenue, because there is an offset. There's a cost of accommodating that customer and trying to put them on another flight. So yes, I will admit that that event caused us to relook at it. But there's no way that a company can make that quick of a decision unless it has been thinking about it and studying it and knew the ramifications. And again, I was very proud of our team. And I don't know who had the idea to do it, whether it was me or somebody else, it doesn't really matter. But we asked the question, can we stop this practice right now? And the answer was, I think we can do it. I think these are the consequences. Our employees would love it. And it's just one less pain point for our customers, which is what we're trying to achieve.
We'll open it up to the audience in just a minute, but I understand recently, too, you dropped the president title from yours, so now you're CEO.
It was too confusing. You know.
Well, this has allowed you to spend, as I understand, too, a lot of time in Washington, D.C. With a new administration, new policies on the horizon.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking about that.
What are you doing when you visit D.C. so often these days?
Are we on the record with all of this? Well, first of all, yeah, Tom Nealon is our president since January, and he's doing a phenomenal job. And to be honest with you all, I don't know it's so much that my job is changing, as much as I felt like we needed a president who could go deeper on a number of issues. The way my life is, it just doesn't allow me to do that. So my behavior hasn't changed that much. Although Jason and I were strategizing that with a new administration, with an opportunity for tax reform, regulatory reform, infrastructure investment, and especially with the need for ATC, air traffic control modernization, that it would be a good time for us to try to spend more time in Washington. Jason heads up our governmental affairs effort, including all the federal affairs. So, yeah, I think in fairness, I probably have spent, I've spent more time in Washington this year. Let's face it, not a lot has gotten done yet. I'm still the eternal optimist and hopeful that we will see meaningful tax reform and regulatory reform. What is exciting is that the administration has proposed FAA reform, which should accelerate the air traffic control modernization effort. And there is a bill that is at least in process in the House, led by a real champion in Chairman Bill Schuster, that includes that FAA reform. So those are the kinds of things that we're working on. Broader income tax reform for corporations and individuals is something that our industry is interested in, but is not quite as focused on. It's just, again, we try to focus our attention more on industry issues. But there are a lot of things in terms of regulatory burdens that we would also like to see rolled back. But it is a ripe field for opportunities there, and hopefully we'll see some progress.
Have you met the president?
I have.
What did you all talk about?
Those three things. Those three things, and again, from the beginning, from the meeting that we had, it was clear that he was interested in the FAA reform topic, and so it was delightful to see that he and the administration followed through with that, with their support, which is pretty much up and down the line what the industry has been recommending. So that's been very welcome.
Excellent. Well, at this point, we'd like to open up questions to the audience. So if you have a question, just stand up. We have thrown the microphones away, so if you just speak louder, we should be able to hear you. Not everybody at once. Yes, sir.
So, over the years, what's the one thing that's remained constant with flyers and people who are your customers? What's the one thing that hasn't changed?
Well, I suppose there's a couple of ways I could answer your question. I think that it is the personality of the airline. There's a pretty common thread all the way back to the 1970s. My very first flight in my life was in 1972 as a high school kid on Southwest Airlines. And the flight attendants were all women at that point. It was 1972. They were all in hot pants. I was 17. It takes me back. It was a Boeing 737-200, and there were 2 other passengers on that flight.
Wow.
And I'm a kid, not thinking, well, this company ain't gonna be around very long, but it was it was a fun experience. When I got out of school, I traveled a lot in my first job and traveled all over Texas, and I traveled on Southwest Airlines.